everybody. Welcome to Construction Record Podcast, Day 1 at CONEXPO. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me...
And this is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor, Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce.
And I've had quite an adventure. I've interviewed 4 different sets of people just today, and you're going to hear 2 of those interviews later. But before we get to that, Vince had his own adventure that I think he should regale us about in great detail. It's Planes, Trays, and Automobiles, Versace edition.
Warren is insisting that I give every little detail of my ordeal today. But it was awful. But you know what? This is what we run into when we travel, right? Especially during the March break time. But you name it, it happened. From tickets not being issued that were supposed to be issued from one carrier to the other, to the train at Pearson that goes from the discount lot to the Terminal 3, one of them being shut down for maintenance, so that caused a backlog. And then the other fact that I had to park at the discount parking lot because the main lot was full. And a whole host of other administrative issues that happened. It's okay, because the one focus, the one goal is getting here to Vegas. And I was, saying to Warren, and I was saying to even my wife, I was like, is it God conspiring against me to not get to CONEXPO?
Exactly.
Because we were so jacked 3 years ago to come. And with days to go, we pulled the plug because of COVID-19. And I think back to that, it's like it was the right decision. Mm-hmm. But we always, for Warren and I, just kind of sat there. Not to speak for you, you're right here. But I felt like we've always been champing at the bit to get back
here.
Yeah,
exactly.
And to actually try it.
Yeah.
Try our
hand.
We have. And now we have, right? Good benefits out of it. He gave us 3 years to refine some of our skills, some of our approaches on things, how we tackle big...
Doing stuff differently when we were 3 years ago.
Totally. Like, look, we're doing live streams. Mm-hmm. That was never really on our radar 3-4 years ago as a news team.
Instagram was a thing, but it wasn't the thing it is now.
Yeah.
So we're doing reels, we're doing stories. I was doing a bunch of that today. I put my first stickers on a reel.
Oh,
just because why the hell not?
Yeah.
And we did a live stream today. We're doing probably one every day. And you've got some other stuff you're going to be doing tomorrow. Yeah,
no, for sure. Some stuff is internal just because it's such an exciting thing to do. I'm going to be sharing kind of a live stream with our content team within Construct Connect tomorrow. I know that's not much for the viewers, but it's not everybody can get here. Mm-hmm. And it's a playground. Mm-hmm. And it's a place where construction comes and meets from around the world, not just North America.
Oh, yeah. I was walking around. I ran into guys from Germany, guys from Mexico, fellow Canadians, people from all over the States.
Yeah. So I'll be doing that. But besides that, too, we're going to be walking a lot of the festival ground floors, networking, meeting some other like-minded kind of construction media types that are out there, construction trade publication types that we've been running into online. Also just shooting more reels, shooting more photos, telling photo stories. Really, tomorrow's the big audio-visual day, I find, for us. When I look at this calendar, like we do have one session tomorrow, the opioids in construction.
Yep.
So looking forward to that. But, and then later on this week, we got quite a few sessions. Like Thursday is a big deal for us. We got marijuana and the federal regulations,
which
U.S. federal.
Much different than it is in Canada, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be great to get intel there that we can share with our readers and our listeners. We have Why Gen Z Eats Sustainability for Breakfast session. That should be kind of cool. And then we got the digital revolution of our productivity crisis. So once again, it's just us trying to cast a wide net. Yep. And just like you did today, quite a few sessions you covered. Today.
Yeah, I covered Show Me the Money, where the infrastructure money is. That's all about the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. You'll hear about that later because I talked to Alison Black, who is Dr. Alison Black, I should say. She gave a presentation about how, she's going to tell you about this, but basically the money is flowing and that is going, a lot of it, most of it is going, not most, but a lot of it is going to transportation and bridges, but not everywhere. And in some projects, like ones from the Johnson administration, they've been lying fallow or now being done. So and it's mostly bipartisan. So that was interesting. The future of building, I did that as well. That was a panel discussion, but I talked to a guy called Kevin Garcia from Trimble, all about data and kids being more adaptable to the upcoming way construction is going to be. So 10 years from now, when they get in the workforce, what they're doing now is what's going to shape what we do then. Also, I went to Be That One Guy, which is all about harassment in the workplace, specifically of women, but Vicky O'Leary from the Iron Workers International, she talks about it. Yes, it's primarily women, but she said, but it can be anybody, and Be That One Guy, it's a gendered term, but there's a reason for that. She goes into an interview, which you'll hear later this week. And then also before all that, this morning I went to talk to people from AEM because they put out an economic report which talks about the mostly good and the bits and pieces that are still bad about manufacturing equipment. Like lots of equipment's being manufactured, but supply chains are still a problem. Inflation's still a problem. But it's on the up and up. It's more up than it's down. Let's put it that way. And that interview will be coming later this week as well.
And what we look forward to is we're going to have a roundup session like this every day. Warren and I will get back together at the end of the day after we're done doing our various coverage and just share a quick summary pod with you and give you a bit of a heads up on what we're doing next.
And give you some interviews.
Yeah, exactly. So I look forward to listening to this stuff because I missed it because I was doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles 2023 version. So I look forward to listening to these in real time with you, the listeners. So thanks for getting them, Warren.
And so the first one will be Show Me the Money, and then the second one, you'll hear right after that, will be The Future of Building. And then we'll come back and we'll give you a sort of a summation of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the week. With me I have
Alison Black.
And Alison just did a session at CONEXPO about the IIJA. She will explain what that acronym is and what the actual act is.
The IIJA stands for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So that is the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed in December 2021, and it provides 5 years of record funding level for highways and bridges, as well as some investment in other modes for transportation construction in the U.S.
This is a landmark bill, and from what I gather, more bipartisan than usual, which I don't know how tough that is, but it is a pretty much, it's more agreement than usual about this bill.
It is. So we saw the actual investment levels in the first year grew 38%. So that is a record. We had to go back to the first 2 years of the program to find any sort of year-on-year increase like this. But I mean the beginning of the program, that was the late 1950s. So this really does reflect, I think, the interest in Congress and especially in the Senate when they wrote and approved this bill in making those necessary investments in our infrastructure system and really trying to make some headway by putting additional funds towards these important projects.
And one of the things you said in the session was that they aren't telling people where they got to spend this money. They're like, okay, states, here's money, spend it. But a lot of it is being spent. Not most of it, but a majority of it is being spent on highways.
That's correct. So 9 out of every $10 in this new funding for highways and bridges in the IIJA is what we call formula dollars. And that means that states have the ability to select the projects where the money is going to go. So they have to be eligible for the federal aid projects. So they have to be either interstates or parts of the national highway system, major roads and bridges, not a local road in front of your house. So the projects do have to qualify, but states get to choose their priorities based on their infrastructure needs. So I think that's a really important part. That is, again, where just about 90% of that money is where that's being used.
And you pointed out, though, it really depends state to state. Tennessee, for instance, is doing a lot of bridge and highway work. And then Maryland, where you're from, I believe you said?
That is right.
Is doing more engineering and sort of software upgrades and stuff that, as you put it, it wouldn't come up in a low bid situation, so this is an ideal place for it to happen.
Right. So each state, in making those decisions, that means that the market is going to look different in each state. So again, federal investment is important because on average it's about half of all the money supporting state highway and bridge capital investment. So federal funds aren't the only source of revenue, but they're a big one. So in a situation, as you pointed out, like Tennessee, we see a lot of major reconstruction, widening, capacity projects. Other states, we see more bridge work because that's where their needs are. And then again, you mentioned Maryland, my home state. Some of the biggest projects from last year, they chose to focus on some upgrades, bridge inspections, planning and design work, all things that are important. But again, if you're a contractor in that state looking for projects, it is going to be a different mix than in other areas. But again, not to say that, not passing judgment on Maryland, but in the first year of the program, states are going to choose different priorities based on their immediate needs.
You also mentioned that labor, there's a labor crunch generally, but that you can definitely see an increase in labor and the payout because of that.
Right. Over the last 10 years, in 2013, states began to increase their own investment in transportation. So there's quite a bit of market growth over the next 10 years, and we saw jobs added in response to that, with wages going up to attract that labor. So when people are always asking about the labor situation, it can definitely be a challenge in certain areas and regions, but I do point to the fact that those market dynamics worked over the last decade. We would expect that to continue. We will see more jobs, but I think we'll also see some of those investments in different types of productivity, software, new technologies, a lot of them here that we're seeing at this show, that are going to help contractors get more output from the labor force that they do have. So I do expect we're going to have a more technology, and that's going to help the situation as this money is being spent over the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, you mentioned at the top of the session that you were going to bust some myths about this act. What are some of these myths?
So some of the things we commonly hear is that it's all being eaten up by inflation, which there's no question. Inflation and project costs and material prices are an issue, but that is not eating up the entire increase in this bill. We estimate that it's probably, we've seen a big increase in the value of contract awards getting out. So this is the backlog of work that's going to be coming down the pipeline. That's increased about 25% this past year, and we estimate that probably project costs were up about 10 to 12%. So if you factor that in, that is still double-digit, significant real growth that we're seeing in terms of that key leading indicator. So I think that's one myth that hopefully we're using data to show that is not the case.
You also mentioned a few projects that were on the books forever. Like one was from the Johnson administration, which predates me. I'm not young. So what are some of those projects? Specific, but do you see that as a trend of projects that have just been sitting around forever because they couldn't do them for whatever reason?
That is a trend. Yes, that is a trend we've seen, is that often when you have a federal bill that has 5 years of stability, and combined with a significant increase in the funding available, we see states start to move some of these bigger projects that, again, they've had on the books for a while. And that is, I think, again, a reflection of the stability in the market and that funding stream, because, again, that federal investment is such an important part of the overall market.
And you also mentioned, from a question for the audience, about equipment purchases and big investments from the private sector, and you said this stability might lend itself to that. Yes,
when we see increasing backlogs, when contractors are feeling better about the situations in their states, whether it's federal investment and state investment in the economy overall, we will see them start to purchase that capital, invest in that equipment and labor, and we expect to see that grow over the next few years as this money gets out into the spending phase.
And you also mentioned, now it's not unheard of for there to be speed bumps along the way. Let's say there's a different administration comes in, this is not what they want, but it's not as likely as possible. And you said part of that is the construction industry itself lobbying or encouraging their local representatives to keep with this thing.
Absolutely. I think the bill is in place. It was approved. It was a bipartisan bill. So I would not expect funding levels to change. I think we can safely count on that over the next few years. The challenge is that sometimes there are either there's discussion in Congress, or there may be talk about trying to cut the program. But what I said in the session is that even in years past, when we've seen any sort of movement to reduce the highway and bridge construction program, that has never succeeded. So I think based on that precedent, we're in good shape. And I think the more that our industry can tell that story about these projects, it's really about the projects, it's about improving people's lives, hiring new workers, good paying jobs. The more that we can share that with elected officials and the public, the more support and understanding there will be that this is a really, really important program that does a lot of good for this country.
Okay, and if listeners are interested in further discussion and study of this, I assume ARTBA is where you go. How do they get there, and what can they find when they get there?
Absolutely. They can find us at ARTBA, ARTBA.org. People, please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. We're always happy to talk about the industry. We cover the economics, the advocacy. We also cover a lot of issues, things related to safety, other policy issues that are certainly part of this bill and that we're working through with Congress and the administration. So we have lots of information on our website, and we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You just came out of the Future of Building panel at CONEXPO, which Kevin was part of, and we were talking about a lot of stuff about the future of building. One of the things was the onslaught of data and what you do with it. So maybe we could address that first. You said data in and of itself isn't all that useful, but it's what you do with it, and there are different branches to that as well.
Absolutely. So, again, to summary, there's a lot of data being collected right now from machines, from various softwares, from the IoT devices that are out in the field. All of that's streaming in because it will be necessary when we think about an orchestrated job site of the future. But what might be important to a specific job site persona is very different. And that data in and of itself may not be valuable. We've got to aggregate the data, analyze the data, and serve up, frankly, insights. And it has to be actionable insights. To tell me the score when the game's already over is not helpful. I need to know during the game. So I can make decisions that might get the job site back on track, more profitable, whatever that may look like. And what project manager needs is different than what supervisor needs, is different than owner needs, but everyone needs access to some level of information, and aggregating that data and serving it back in a way is really the secret sauce of what we're all trying to solve.
Yeah, you said the platforms are here or on the way, but you're going to need in the future a data analyst or an IT guy or some form of person who can take this stuff, and not just from one platform, but from many, and sort of turn it into what you need.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting where contractors, owners, engineering firms, different service providers, this is going to probably open up a new marketplace for people like ISVs and people who take data and serve it back in a dashboard that's meaningful for a specific work field. So it's impossible to build one platform to serve all markets and have it be meaningful for every single persona that might access it. It would be so monolithic it would almost be cumbersome. There will be opportunities for people to take, let's say, widgets or pieces out of individual things and consolidate it for themselves. And if your technology provider is doing that for you, great. But if they're not, the ability to do that and having that ability within your own workforce could be very valuable.
One of the other things that was touched on is that the adaptability has to come from companies as well. I think you pointed to one thing with remote work having been a thing, but now we're going to get to the point where people are operating heavy equipment and they're not going to be there. They're going to be 4 states over. So, and companies are going to have to, if it works, just accept that.
Correct. Yeah. And this is a hotly contested thing right now, right? How fast can autonomy move so that remote control maybe gets leapfrogged? No one knows the answer to that question. But yes, companies are going to find that, today's workforce coming out is they're very comfortable with IT, they're very comfortable with digital, but they've also grown up in a world where things were flexible. COVID changed everything for kids at school. They attended school remotely, they had flexible work hours. They're going to expect the same thing as they enter our industry. And certain job sites lend themselves to that, certain job tasks lend themselves to that. If you're a digital construction company and you do modeling, that modeling could happen in the middle of the night. It could happen first thing in the morning. As long as it gets to the job site on time and it's accurate, you may not care. You may find the best modeler in the world likes to work in the middle of the night. As an employee, you might latch onto that. Same thing with operators. If you've got a quality operator who decides he needs to relocate for family needs, but you don't want to lose him, and remote is an opportunity, that might be how we get job sites done in the future. And I think that's, it might be intimidating, but it's also inspiring. I think we'll find ways to get more work done that way in a world where labor is hard to find.
And you cited your own 6-year-old
yes.
who looked at 3D modeling you were doing. And said, well, this is just Minecraft. And
exactly.
They're not wrong.
Yeah. The digital world today, most platforms, I'll say Trimble's in particular, you go out there, it's to kids, it's a video game. They see a tablet, they automatically know how to interact with it. I can pinch to zoom, I can swipe right, I can swipe left, press to hold. It's just an innate ability they have. We don't train them. What you're really training them on is now what do the task functions do to excavate a trench or build a dam, whatever the case may be. They're very comfortable with that. And where some of the workforce already with lots of experience, they don't need that. But we're about to have a big gap here where aging workforce, high productivity output, or retiring, we're going to have to replace that in one way, shape, or form, and digital is one of those ways we're going to do it.
And that was another thing that even with this IIJA Act and all the money that's pouring in, and a prosperous industry, you're still going to need to do more with less because the labor isn't going to be there no matter what you do.
That's right. We still have, supply chain is not behind us. There are still long lines for new equipment. We still have labor shortages. And the fact of the matter is we've got to work faster. There's a staggering statistics, something like 60+% of jobs don't finish on time. That number has to come down so that we can get more work done in the construction season so that we can start spending that infrastructure money before it's gone. And one of the ways to do that is through technology. Yeah.
And finally, they were talking about interoperability and how that's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. But I think it might have been you, it might have been somebody else who said there's not just one contractor on a site, and there's certainly not one brand of material or equipment on a site.
Yeah, the mixed fleet is very much, in most sites you go to, you're going to find varying OEMs informed of the tractor. You're going to have potentially a GC with multiple subs. Everyone working from the same sheet of music is what's important. Construction's a team sport, and I liken it like this. If I have one Tesla with full self-drive and I need to get from here to the airport, I get in, I type in my task, I hit go. You could give me 1,000 Teslas, it would not change the workflow one bit. I still get there in the exact same amount of time. But I go to a construction site where I've got 7 machines working in orchestra. They all need to know what each other's doing, how they're contributing to the overall project task line. But what happens if one of those breaks down? Or what happens if another machine gets introduced because someone else finished early? That interoperability has to be there. Everyone has to know what's going on, working on the same project plan, same model. Otherwise, you might as well all be disconnected, and that's not going to work for anybody. And today, Trimble is very brand agnostic. We can go on any make model, most machine types. You've got everything from excavator, bulldozer, motor grader through drilling, piling machines, and even marine construction with cutter suction dredges. The technology available today spans almost everything you can touch in construction.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Alison Black and Kevin Garcia for letting us talk to them today. That was great and wonderful of them. And there'll be more of that as time goes on. We've got some more interviews in the can already, and we're getting some as the week goes. So there's going to be content for this week for sure, and probably in weeks to come as well.
And for those of you who maybe don't know, we do have an Instagram account for the Construction Record. Just type in the Construction Record and it'll come up. You'll be able to see the videos and reels that we're posting from the sessions here as well. Like if you listen to our pod, take the time to like it, to review it, to share it. We'd really appreciate it. And if you happen to be here at the show and you're catching this and you want us to be on your radar because you think you got a story to tell or something interesting, drop us a line. You know what I mean? In the replies to the pod, to the Instagram account, or email, or just come by the Construct Connect booth. We're at the North Hall, N11076 is the number to find on the map, N11076. And if you happen to be around and be near our booth, I should really talk about it. Hey, Construct Connect is our parent company. So as much as this sounds like a commercial, I keep saying this, if the innovation and the tech that we have at our booth was being brought to the market by another company, we would be covering it. And in particular, what we have is called Takeoff Boost. You're going to hear a special pod on that this week, where we kind of dive into it a bit on why it's so important and how it could help companies be a bit more efficient when it comes to takeoff. And at the booth itself, we have a challenge of boost versus being, which is kind of interesting. It's basically somebody trying to do takeoff on one screen and somebody using takeoff boost on the other, and to see where the efficiencies and the speed difference comes out. So once again, that's at the Construct Connect booth, 11076 in the North Hall. Come on by. If you're trying to reach Warren and I, and you can't find us any other way via social, leave a message there with one of our colleagues, and we'll follow up for sure.
And if you're around 4-ish to 5-ish Pacific time online, just we might be on, or we might have just posted another live stream. We'll be doing one of those every day.
Mm-hmm. So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Hope you share our stuff and like it too. And if you're here at ConExpo, say hello.
Yep, and stay tuned because there's going to be one of these every day until Friday.